Good evening. Welcome to the Goffstown Planning Board. This is our regularly scheduled meeting. We begin with introductions with David, please.
Dave Pierce, I'm alternate.
Colleen Mayu.
Barbara Griffin.
Brian Mazer.
Kimberly Peace.
Tim Redmond.
Scott Ozana, Town Engineer.
Philip Devanza.
Mark Lemay, Selectman Rep.
Joanne Duffy, Planning and Economic Development Director.
I'm looking around. Joanne, do we have a full board tonight, or is anybody missing? I don't think anyone's missing, right?
Three,
Yeah.
1, 2,
Okay.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Just
Yes.
wanted to decide whether David was voting or not.
Yeah, there's a full board.
Okay. All right, first item on the agenda is our minutes from February 22nd.
Motion to approve with correction.
I'll
There's a
second.
motion made to approve with corrections. Go ahead.
Is it second?
Yeah.
I second, yeah.
Okay. Page 4, middle of it, says Phil Devanza said he's experienced where they have a threshold for CIP. I did say right there, not in Goffstown, but other communities. I specifically said that. I don't want it left out. People think that I'm saying that it happened in Goffstown.
Okay, any other corrections for the minutes as? So the motion's been made to accept the minutes as corrected. It's been seconded. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? I'm abstaining, I wasn't here.
Likewise.
Mark is also abstaining, he's not here.
Thanks.
Okay. Moving on. Joanne, we have two requests for continuations. Could you tell us about them, please?
Yes, so the first one is map 10, lot 8-1, and that was for a proposed two-lot subdivision that was located at 66 Tenney Road. The surveyor who was representing the owner wasn't able to complete everything for this meeting, so they're asking for a continuance to March 28th.
Motion to continue.
Second.
Motion made to continue the application as requested. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes. Next one, Joanne?
The other one is map 20, lot 16. Excuse me. They are asking for a site plan subdivision and conditional use permit review for Stinson Hills LLC for 26-unit residential condominium called Dearborn Village. They have been before the board, and the board has asked them to make some amendments. They've done that. We did receive the plans today. However, it wasn't in enough time for us to review, so they've asked for a continuance to the March 14th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded, Barbara and Colleen, to grant the request from Dearborn Village Condos to be continued till March 14th. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes. I'd like to go back to the minutes. Our correspondence and action items state approval of the correction of minutes from February 22nd. I may have read it like that. The minutes were actually from February 8th. I think I may have read February 22nd because I was reading from the from our program here. So the minutes were from February 8th.
Gotcha.
And my motion was for February.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So our first application of the evening is an old business item, map 34, lot 18. Joanne, could you give us a quick rundown on where we are with this application?
Yes, so this application was continued from the January 25th meeting. This is an application to add 2 apartments to a site that has, excuse me, 3 now. So he's raised the barn that's already been completed, and he's adding 2 apartments to his site. The board went through this plan pretty thoroughly and came up with a list of the items that they would like to see addressed. They do have waivers. One is for the bioretention, which is required on private sites and private roads, requiring site plan approval unless otherwise waived. And the other one is for exterior lighting plan. They had mentioned at the last meeting that they were only having porch lights on the new building. So they're asking for a waiver for an actual lighting plan. They did submit a traffic letter on January 5th, and that has been reviewed. Scott is fine with this project. They did address your concerns.
All my comments are addressed
Yeah.
as satisfactory.
So that's kind of where we're at right now.
So what's left to be discussed this evening, Joanne?
Well, I would first look at the two waivers,
Okay?
and then, let's see, the parking spaces are there. They've addressed and provided a landscaping plan. There were some concerns at the last meeting about what types of plants they would be providing. That's really it, and then there's a list of suggested conditions at the end.
So did the landscaping plan, was that discussed and decided at the last meeting?
It was discussed, and one of the recommendations was to plant, I forget what it was called, you had said blueberry bushes you were planting. Did you make those changes?
So the plans did show, and Trevor with Meridian Land Services for
I'll say,
the
let me
record.
start up for 1 second before you start.
Yeah.
Joanne, we're not going to include them until I make sure the board is all
Oh,
clear with
okay.
you first, though. Any questions for staff from members of the planning board, including Public Works? Seeing none, could you please identify yourself for the record, and we'll introduce you, please.
Trevor Yanda with Meridian Land Services, representing the applicant.
And Brian Noway, owner.
Thank you for coming. Go ahead.
So, yeah, going off of what Joanne had said, I guess my recollection from the meeting was that we had essentially 5 items that we had to provide. One was the waivers on the town waiver form, which I have provided along with owner authorization and the originally submitted waiver requests that I believe were accepted for discussion purposes. Those requests have not changed. The lighting, we did add to sheet LS1. There are graphic depictions of the existing and proposed lighting fixtures on the buildings. And again, one of the waiver requests was for the photometric plan, just given the scope. Doesn't really seem necessary. There were 2 drainage-related items. One was having test pits excavated, which we did. They're shown on sheet 1 of the plans, and indicated well-draining sandy soils, kind of as we had expected. And then working with Scott on just the drainage patterns for the site. I know there was some discussion on, are we going to look at this site as a single observation point versus 2? We have split that up, and my understanding is Scott and I are on the same page as far as that goes. And the last item was going to the sewer commission, which Brian did go before the commission on February 13th and got approval tonight. Those are, I guess, the outstanding items that we've addressed. I know in the staff report it also notes the fire department had a couple follow-up, I guess, questions more than anything. I did have a phone conversation with Will Connor on February 16th. One of his questions was, is the south side of East Union vertical granite curbing, because he would be concerned with the truck access turning into the site. It's sloped granite, and I did relay that to him, and he was agreeable to that. His other question was in regards to the trees that we're proposing on each side of the driveway. the way they're depicted, his question was, is the canopy gonna obstruct if a truck is turning into here? What I explained to him was that these are the mature sizes of these trees, and when the canopies are that large, the bottom is actually gonna be above the vertical clearance of the fire truck. And I did discuss with him the tree on the east side of the driveway, that could be moved a little, a little bit more in this, this direction to the east. If the board feels that's warranted, the trees could also be pruned if it's ever become a nuisance, but I don't see it as being an issue there. So I guess with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions, but those were the items that we had on our plate.
Did you determine that the overflow from the grass spillway will indeed flow to the road? That was, we
Yes.
requested that?
Yes, it will.
Because I'm seeing elevation to spillway is 310, but I see a spot elevation out near the road is 310.1, which is actually higher than the spillway.
Yeah, and that spot, and really, the spot elevation here, I should have had it over here, but this 310 contour wraps around here, and this is lower than 310. It's gonna flow this way, not towards this 310.1. That was more just for grading purposes and illustrating it, but where the spillway is, it's lower than 310, so it is gonna make its way, northerly and easterly towards the roadway.
And is the test pit location shown in the middle of the basin where your test pit was actually dug?
Yes, it's in the general vicinity of that.
And what was your determination on that soil again, please? Is that included on your map anywhere, or is that in a separate report?
So the test pit log itself is in the drainage report that I provided.
It's in the drainage report.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep.
And the soil type was?
Sandy loam, granular, well draining material.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any
For
other
both
board
of them,
members?
yeah.
Just for your knowledge, I believe the 100-year storm doesn't even exceed the spillway.
Right, well, as long as you've got the calculations and you've accepted them, we're good.
I don't have any questions. It looked like the write-up we got from Meridian addressed everything that Scott had raised. We had talked about the landscaping and thought that the landscaping that's on the site and what had been proposed was okay because of where the screening really needs to be. And the lighting, they put on the plans what we were asking for. I don't think it needs new lighting. So, that sort of goes to the waiver, but.
All right, so then, if no one else has any more questions, let's move on to waivers. Waiver number 1 is Development Regulation Appendix C, Sections 1.C.1, bioretention required. And what is your recommendation on this, Scott, for the waiver that's being requested?
I recommended that the board approve the waiver. There's little to no difference between the functionality of bioretention versus the infiltration basin that they're proposing.
Any questions for Scott from board members, or questions for the engineer as well?
I make a motion to grant the waiver request, finding that the proposal satisfies the spirit and intent of the regulation, and strict conformity would pose an unnecessary hardship.
I'll second it.
Motion's been made to grant the waiver request for Appendix C, Section 1.C.1, bioretention requirement. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion granted. Passes unanimously. Second waiver request is for the exterior lighting plan. Barbara had touched on it briefly. Does anybody else have anything else they want to add?
Make a motion that we accept the request for a waiver to Goffstown Development Regulations 4.C.22 exterior lighting plan. Strict conformity would pose an unnecessary hardship to the applicant, and the waiver would not be contrary to the spirit and intent of the regulations.
Motion's been made by Kimberly, I have a second on that.
Second.
Colleen. Any discussion on the motion to grant the waiver for the exterior lighting request, exterior lighting plan? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion granted. The traffic letter was submitted and you accepted the traffic letter as substance. Joanne, are there any outstanding issues at this time?
No, there's just the conditions of approval that we've included as a recommendation.
Everybody take a few minutes to look over the conditions of approval.
So do we still need number 5, or did the sewer commission give approval?
We did, but you can leave it in the record that
Okay.
it was granted. I mean, number 10, they state they're not going to dig in the street, so even number 10 is, it's not, but it's there because it should be there,
Okay.
Just in case.
in case.
They're pretty standard. I don't think we need 16.
I'm looking at the general comments, approval conditions, and now I'm going to the next page, number 8, start over again. The fire department's comments, you spoke with the fire department and you had a phone conversation with Bill.
Yes, I did.
Could you make sure that a record of that conversation is submitted to Joanne as part of the final record? Because if it's not in the record tonight, we'll take you at your word and it should be at least
Yeah,
submitted. in
and
writing.
I have tried reaching out via email, and I haven't had any luck.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm not going to ask the applicant, I don't think we should ask the applicant to say any more than he did. We know historically getting responses from the fire department has been
Well,
very
Barbara,
difficult.
I only said it because he made statements on the record here tonight. And in order that they're recorded correctly, I'd like to have him just put it into the record. If you think it's unnecessary, that's fine.
I don't think it's necessary.
They're
If the fire
protecting
department
themselves.
has a big concern, they need to send the stuff over. They knew the application was coming up. And I always view the canopies on plans as aspirational.
So we're going to strike comment 16, condition 16.
I think the applicant has made a representation that the trees, he's spoken to Lieutenant Connor, that they're satisfactory at this point, and if they're like any other trees, if there are problems in the future, they're going to have to deal with the fire department.
Was there an escrow account established at the beginning of this process, Scott? For review and for inspections and such?
I don't recall if this one was considered large enough for escrow.
Well, are you going to be out inspecting work and? spending time out there?
There's site inspection, condition 2 is requesting escrow. I don't have an estimate for that yet,
Well,
for the value.
I think we should establish that an escrow should be funded at the agreement between you and the owner for some funds, so that since it's not in the conditions.
It is condition 2.
It is
Number
two.
two.
Number 2. At the last
Page
sentence.
Oh,
nine.
excuse me,
Condition
that's the only
Yeah.
words I missed. Okay, thank you. As long as it's in the conditions.
2. Yeah, I
We
don't
got
have
two
an
sets of
estimate
conditions
for
here.
it yet.
I
so
know,
don't
that's
know
why I
about
said
that.
I was
page
reading- I was
9.
reading the wrong set,
Sorry.
page 7.
Yes.
Then I went to page 9 and found the right conditions.
That's how
Yes.
I label my comments when I send them to Joanne, when they're just,
Tim?
can go right into the conditions, so.
Bill, please.
Yeah, that second sentence that we just talked about, instead of saying should, it should say to be.
Yeah.
Will or something definitive, right?
It shall be.
Shall.
Yeah,
Where
sorry.
are you referencing?
Number 2,
I don't want to
Page
be, I
nine.
didn't want meant to be that
Shall
strong.
be.
that's a good
paid.
Jim Raymond remember.
But better than should.
Yeah.
Jim would be happy with you. Now find a grammatical error and you'll get a,
No, don't look too closely at mine, I'm sure you'll find it. Me too.
all right, anything else to discuss on this application we've forgotten to discuss, Joanne, prior to moving on?
No, it's fine.
Okay. Board?
Make a motion that we grant approval of this project with the suggested conditions for approval as discussed number 1 through 15 on pages 8 and 9 of the staff report, not including number 16, which was addressed by the applicant.
Second.
Brian got it.
Brian.
Do we have to have
Findings of fact?
findings of fact? Thank you, forgot that phrase.
We do have
We
to have
do.
findings of fact.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could I-
Do you have
could I
that
also-
written down? Oh.
I know I mentioned this to Joanne, in terms of precedent versus subsequent conditions, I think a lot of the conditions listed are more, they're building permit related, so I guess I just want to make sure, you know, we can, what needs to be done before the plan is signed is separate from, you know, like he gets building
No,
permit.
these are standard conditions.
I know, yeah,
The
it's just
plan, the
not,
plan will get signed,
yeah, okay.
and then,
All right.
Yeah.
obviously, if you start building without a building
Well-
permit, that's not our problem.
Yeah, understood. Okay, no, I just,
We go through the list and
and then it's in the
make
note.
sure that the plans aren't signed until those certain conditions are
okay,
met.
yep.
And then Tim will come in and sign the plan.
Okay,
These other conditions will remain, you'll need to show them on the plan itself.
there'll be, yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
and then that's how people
Gotcha,
will know
okay.
that still
Thank
needs
you.
to be done.
Do we have findings of fact, Joanne?
No, we don't.
Well, can you come up with some for us to meet the law?
Sure.
I can amend my proposal, finding of facts, how do we say this, as follows. We find that the applicant meets the requirements of the condition, or the subdivision requirements? Is this a subdivision?
Of the
development requirements.
regulations.
Draft sign regulations, inclusive of the 2 waivers that were granted tonight. Try that, see if that works.
The only time we really have to worry about findings of fact is if we get challenged, because if we don't have
If we
findings-
deny them,
Well,
that's
if we
what
get
we need
challenged
to
in
be.
court, then
Yeah.
you've erred. All right, so we have findings of fact. Do we have to have, is that in form of a motion, Joanne? Or is that just
Well,
something
yeah.
that's included on
Yeah,
the
just
record?
included
So-
the meeting minutes from the last one, and we included it in the motion of approval.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
incorporated in, make it, that we make a finding that it meets the
Okay, so
requirements of
we've
the
met the
development
burden of
regs
the finding.
and conditioned on 1 through 15.
Thank you.
So I amended my motion, who seconded?
Brian, seconded the motion. And the Motion's been seconded. All right. Any discussion on the motion, which includes finding of facts now? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Good luck with your project. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
This is really good.
Mark, Joanne, could you please tell us what we're doing next? This a new application?
Sure. This is a new, excuse me, this is a new application for map 8, lots 46-16-10 and 46-16-12, which is 70 and 64 Meadowlark Lane. The applicants are Denise Langley and the Cody Family Trust. Basically, what they're doing is, if you look at, there's 2 parcels. There's parcel A. There's parcel A and parcel B. So the Langleys own 461610. And several years ago, when they subdivided this parcel, for some reason, parcel A was never transferred over by deed to the Langley land. So they're doing that now as part of this lot line adjustment, but they're also purchasing additional land from the neighbor, which is parcel B. And it actually works out because part of their structures and outbuildings were on the other person's land. So now this would straighten everything out, and it would give the Langleys additional additional acreage, so their lot would go from 4.022 acres to 5.338 acres. I can't talk. I feel like a frog. And that's basically all it is. They're not building anything. It's just pretty straight out.
Okay, board members have any questions for staff?
Motion to find the application is complete and that there is no regional impact.
Second.
Was there any waiver request, Joanne?
No, there were none.
Okay, so, motion to find the application is complete and ready to review. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes. And no regional impact. Okay. Anybody have any questions for staff? If not, I invite the applicants to come up and let us know what they'd like to do. In their words.
Denise Langley.
Steve Langley.
Thank you.
So I just want to clear one thing up. None of the structures are encroaching.
Oh, it looked like they were.
If you look at the
The first
lot line
subdivision.
adjusted originally, that gave us the clearance from anything. And that lot line was adjusted before we built what is shown here is a shed. That's our pool house. So, and it's probably immaterial. I just wanted to clear that up.
Okay, thank you.
So the basic reason for the moving the lot line is because we've been neighbors for about 25 years and we've kind of commingled a lot, their family, and so when they told us they were going to move, they actually offered this to us to make this lot line subdivision. Our concern was that if they moved and somebody came in and held to the lot line, put a fence up or something, it was going to be what would look like it's through our yard. So it made sense to do this to end up being good neighbors and not have future conflicts. And it just gives us a little bit more level of comfort, have a little more distance to the lot line. We don't plan on going anywhere, and they do.
Questions from the board?
Joanne, can I just ask, because, and I think what you explained to me, but I just want to confirm, so that parcel A, that was previously adjusted by plan,
Correct.
but not actually transferred by deed?
Correct.
And so I see you do have a condition in here that making sure that when this is done, that deed transfer, because like you said, to make sure that everything's clean, that
Right.
the
Yep.
deed be transferred and
Correct.
get everything cleaned up for you guys. Okay, thank you.
Well, I don't do flag lots anymore.
Nothing wrong with flag lots.
I love it.
With the way it's going in the world today with the Housing Appeals Board, I think we're going to be thinking about them again someday. All right.
Anybody? Or just make a motion?
Well, I think we have to open a public hearing, which we didn't. You can stay where you are, because I usually forget. We actually forgot on the last application, but that's all right. We get away with it this time. So I'm going to open a public hearing.
Sorry, I remembered it a few minutes ago, but I had forgotten during the,
I'll say it for the record, so if we have to have him back someday because there's a problem, I said it. I'm going to open the public hearing at this time. If anybody would like to speak, please come forward. I'll close the public hearing. Now, that I've done that, do we have any other questions or suggestions from the board before we have a motion? Do you have anything to say about this, town
No,
engineer?
I do not,
Good.
no.
Good. I'm writing the motion down here until somebody says it.
I make a motion that we approve the subdivision lot line adjustment, it's not subdivision, sorry, lot line adjustment per the conditions for approval on staff report, page 12, conditions 1 through 7. I don't see anything unusual out there.
I'm finding it back.
Findings of fact is that,
Was it in the minutes last time?
well, it was kind of like I just made the
Oh, good,
findings.
we'll make it up again.
So you think it's that the
There it is.
subdivision requirements meet all of, the property, well, it hasn't been subdivided.
We'll make something up out of it.
The only changes to the lot lines, and we agree that they meet our requirements per our subdivision requirements.
Thank you for that.
Gail,
So
you fix that.
Kimberly made the motion,
Second.
seconded by Phil. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion passes.
Thank you very much.
That is the fastest application
just
in the
gonna
history
say.
of the
Anyone have a timer set on that?
I know.
Good night.
Last time.
Kimberly, we're really putting you on the spot here last meeting, though, right? Making you,
Going on the record.
So, we're gonna go back to the page, the front page of our meeting agenda. And I have another business thing I'd like to bring up, if the board is willing to listen for a minute. In our development reg rewrite, Scott has been working with Joanne on establishing some timeframes for submission of materials to the planning department so that there is time for it to be reviewed by staff and still make it into the packet at the appropriate day. Scott has made a recommendation to Joanne. We'll wait for them to iron it out, and then when you bring it to us for discussion, we'll hear about it.
It's not for new applications, it's for those that get continued. And then they
Yeah.
come in at the last minute and expect to be
you need to have time to
Yeah.
review them
Yeah.
before they get.
And there's nothing in the regs now that addresses that. I've been telling them the Thursday before, so it's the Thursday before the packets go out, so it's really like 2 weeks before the meeting. But they're running in with, the Wednesday, like the packets have to go out Thursday and they're coming in Wednesday. And I finally put my foot down this meeting. I wasn't in the office. It was easier, and I just said, no, we're not taking it. So that's what happened.
Yeah, having it in the regulations,
Yeah.
you have some teeth, I think.
So that's half of what I'd like to discuss. The other half is, with certain applications, not all, but certain applications request multiple continuances. I would like to put in a definitive number of continuances that is allowed in our regulations before we have to trigger a renotice. Because there's a financial impact for renoticing. And it would do well for applicants to know that if they have 2 continuances, the third one requires renoticing, or whatever this board decides on is an appropriate amount of continuances to, well, it's also the public, because the public comes to meetings on certain applications to speak, and after they drive all the way down here and sit in a meeting for 5 or 10 minutes and find out that they've been continued, those people have wasted their time for an hour or 2.
Right.
So, in the interest of the public and the interest of speedy applications, I think the board should decide on a number of continuances that is going to be allowed. So I would take comment from the board. Barbara?
Well, I guess I agree. But in my opinion, there are 2 reasons things get submitted before they're really complete. One is because people have a client who says, you have to get this in for this meeting, and you can tell the client till you're blue in the face that it's not going to get acted on then, but the client wants it, they put it in knowing it's not complete. Or because I'm going to give the engineers who work on these projects the benefit of the doubt that they know it's not complete, and staff ends up spending a ridiculous amount of time on them. The other reason is to get them in because they're worried something is going to change in our zoning ordinance that is going to impact their application. So they get them in, and then we're looking at months of continuances. So I can't say I disagree with you. I'm not really sure how we do that legally.
What would be illegal, Barbara, in your opinion?
I don't know, because if anything, the state statute sets a date for approval and considers it, and we're constantly asking applicants in those cases to waive the clock. So it's almost like, you know, if there's a third continuance request, I don't know, can you do a presumption that the board's going to deny it because the application isn't complete? I mean,
in some ways,
I
maybe,
don't think it's based on denial, Barbara. I think it's
Yeah.
based on people, excuse me, Colleen, for interrupting. I don't think it's based, I think it's based on the fact that people come in, like you said, they're not prepared, and then when they try to get things done in order to keep up with the process, they don't have either the prior experience, or they don't have the people available to do it. And if it's, we could look at it from 2 points. If it's their fault because they're asking for continuances, then I think it's appropriate. But if we stated something that they had to do that cost them more time, then we would have the ability to waive it, the re-noticing requirement.
but then what we really come back to is our application sheet for certification that the application is complete is woefully inadequate and needs to have some teeth in it for when Scott ends up looking at these plans.
Well, we've
and
had
it's-
this argument for 10 years.
Well, so we're redoing the development regs, so I'm presuming that now is the time to address
There's
it.
there's a checklist.
Can we go on to Colleen about this subject first? before
that's
we
the
move on?
direction I was going in, was the thought of being that the development regulations need to give the staff more teeth so that they could be the gatekeepers, so that something's not getting on the agenda until it's, I think the trouble is we're seeing a lot of things coming in that are not ready to be accepted as complete, or they're accepted as complete because they submitted a butters list and a plan, but we know that realistically, so I think that by having a more substantive checklist that lets the staff be the gatekeepers a little bit more, so we don't end up with items that are being continued for completeness purposes, I think then we're still gonna have the issue of if something was complete but we still have questions and they need to, in that case though, I do agree that there may be we need to set some sort of reasonable, because if a butter comes down here, they're not gonna be checking next month and then checking next month, and we continue it 3 or 4 times. So I agree that I think we need to check what we can do by statute if there are gonna be some restrictions on us, because once we have accepted it as complete, we do have that time clock. But I think the completeness checklist, but then also, to your point, establishing something that we have the authority to do, and it's just not reasonable. It's not fair to the abutters if things are constantly continued.
Scott, thanks, Barbara.
Yep.
I forgot what it was.
Well, that's good.
You were gonna talk about the
Did you forget, Barbara?
Oh, I was gonna bring up, we do have a draft checklist. and
A
it's
new
pretty-
draft checklist.
Yes, it's pretty substantial too. It almost probably needs things cut from it after I was looking at it the other day.
Well,
We can cut it later.
We could cut it as a board, because
Okay.
is it, Scott, I don't know how you review plans, so I don't know whether there's, sort of when I get a court order, I look at the first page and then I go to the end to see what the order is, and then I read the middle, right? So is there, no, I read it all the time, all the way through. So
You said that on
being
TV, and your
recorded.
clients are all watching.
So is there a way to have
Maybe one of them.
a preliminary review before you accept it? Like, received for review on completeness on the 2nd. On the, staff has 2 days to decide whether all the major, we have you correcting stuff on sheets that's just mind-boggling to me.
Well, it's been my complaint for as long as I've been on this board, that applicants pay their engineers $200 to $300 an hour to draw plans, or whatever the current rate is. But when they submit an incomplete plan to us, he reviews it, and by statute, we're only allowed to use his pay plus his benefits as deducted from the escrow account. So if his pay and benefits comes to $95 an hour or $100, whatever the number may be, they're getting engineering done for 1/3 of the price. And I've been fighting this since I've been sitting in any one of these chairs.
So is there a way before the escrow account billing begins to have a review, essentially at the planning counter figuratively, that says, okay, we'll let you know in 48 hours whether or not we're gonna take it in?
The planning board is the only body that can actually make the decision as to whether it's complete or not,
I understand that,
unfortunately.
but you were able to tell staff, no, we're not taking
Right,
it,
and
it's
he-
not getting on the agenda.
Right.
2 days might not be enough, because if they bring a plan to Joanne, he still has to look at it,
Well, I'm just,
briefly, if nothing else.
well, that's what I'm asking him, is sort of, is there,
The thing that I find the most issues with is drainage reports. And that's where I spend the most time, like, that's where I actually have to look the closest, so there's not a quick review to check that. You know, I guess I could check like one instance of a catch basin or something if it's, you know, if it's surcharging, or if their pond's not big enough, the outfall, the spillway's not high, the elevation isn't high enough, some quick checks like that.
But now we're talking about two different things, because as long as they submit the drainage report in the
That's right.
beginning,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
complete.
Okay.
And then the review starts. But I think you're right. I think more of our problem is not so much whether it's complete in the beginning, because most of them are. It's once they come here and they get a list of, you need to do this, 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 and then they bring their plans back, and they don't give the two of us enough time, and they expect to be put on that next agenda.
Well, one thing about the DPW review is I don't believe the DPW should give solutions to the problems on the plan. I think the DPW should look at it. If he comes up with 10 points that are wrong on the plan, he should give the plan back to the applicant and say, your drainage report does not meet the regulations. And give it back to them. Don't give them the solutions to the freeboard is at the wrong height, or you don't meet the 50-year storm. It's not our job to do their work. Our job is to review their work and say it meets the regulations, not provide the answers for them. So how many times have we seen someone come in with 35 and 40 comments from engineering because his plan is incomplete? The numbers don't add up. This is wrong, that's wrong. You're providing all the solutions for them. All they have to do is plug it into their plan. It's done. No more solutions. Your drainage report is incomplete. Bring it back to us when you're ready.
So,
The thing I don't like about, you can go ahead.
Go ahead, Mark.
If we don't give them a solution to the issue, will that prolong the,
Sure.
That's
Let
what
it
I was gonna
prolong.
basically say.
I'd
I'm
love
just
to
gonna
have it
keep seeing
prolonged.
it over and over again.
I don't believe that we should be providing engineering services at his rate for
I agree,
applicants.
100%.
And then he doesn't spend all that time preparing all those solutions to give them. He does a 2-hour review, he bills the escrow account 2 hours at the rate, the bill goes in, your drainage report, your drainage is incomplete. Give it back to us when it meets our regulations, and let them look up the work, and let them do the work.
So we need to give Scott a raise so we can charge him.
Sure.
For it.
Go for it.
I don't think you guys can vote on that, though.
so
We do, in March.
That's true.
I don't think that this solves the fact of people using Scott as their, QA, QC, but by statute, there is, in between a conceptual review and a formal review, there is a design review process that doesn't have to go to the planning board, that I think is more reflective of our TRC, that it's sort of requiring people to spend a little more time at the TRC, at the design review level, before they're submitting that formal application to the planning board. Still it uses Scott's time, unfortunately, rather than their engineer, but it stops them if we sort of have that design review round before they're coming formally to the planning board. We're not getting them on our agenda before they're ready, but it does still mean that there's that technical review. The technical review process is a little bit longer lead time. It's more effort for staff, but
I'm going to say this based on my memory of a conversation with an engineer and I could be wrong, and if I'm wrong, I'll stand corrected, but I believe that it could be the city of Manchester that does not allow an application to come before the board before it's gone through the whole engineering process. It's all done in-house before the application ever makes it to this table.
That's what Bedford does too.
Bedford does the same thing.
Londonderry as well.
So
maybe we need
is
to-
what you're working on propose a system that's like that?
We could.
Maybe we should be looking at something that incorporates that. I
What they
agree
do
with
in-
your problem with the late submission, yes, but we also, inclusive in the whole process is this other item.
So when someone submits to Bedford, I just spoke with their planning director recently, they actually are not submitting to the planning board yet, they're submitting to the staff.
To the planning
And then the
department.
staff has, they do it remotely, they have a meeting and they kind of talk with each other and say what they think is wrong with it or what it's lacking or whatever. And then they send a letter to the engineering firm saying, you need to do this, this, and this. Then they meet again after they get a second set of plans. And they have everything pretty much worked out before it even is submitted to the planning board. So,
What do they do about charging escrow fees for review? Or do
I
they?
don't know, do you know?
Bedford's mostly third party, so it's
Okay.
usually in Londonderry the same. I'm
Yeah.
not sure about the city of Manchester, but so it's, the application comes in,
Yeah.
goes out to Stan Tech or whoever, what's the estimate? It's gonna cost
Yeah.
$3,000 to review this
We
project.
could do the same
soup to
thing with
nuts.
us. We don't.
We could do that. We don't have
We could be the
to,
third party
Yeah.
in the same
Yeah.
formula.
yeah.
I thought you were trying to get rid of me first.
First you gotta raise and one raise.
I left consulting.
Amazing thing swing. But
Well.
Is that initial review what some people might say is the TRC?
Yeah, that's what they kind of refer to it as. And they don't include the applicant in their meeting for some reason, I'm not really sure why. But they just review it amongst the staff, and then the applicant gets involved as the changes are being made.
So what we see, what you see at TRC, a plan that is in a format that's coming to us? Or
No,
is it
we
very
usually see
preliminary?
it very preliminary,
So maybe that's the-
conceptual.
Maybe that's
It's like
the
napkin
issue.
sketches sometimes.
Yeah.
Because if you look at it from that point of view, what we're discussing, it would reduce the amount of time we would discuss engineering items at a planning board meeting, because we would come in, we would ask staff, do you concur with their engineering conclusions? And staff says, all the engineering is up to the standards for the town of Goffstown. We don't gotta talk about detention ponds or drainage features. We could talk about things that matter to the public, like landscaping and building design and things like that. But there's no reason for us to I'm not an engineer, I don't think anybody else here is an engineer other than Scott, so there's practical experience and then there's college experience. He's got
So
the-
if we have a TRC process and there's a separate fee for that or not?
I don't know about the fees.
Okay.
I think they do include their third-party engineering firm in the meeting. I'm pretty sure they do. So they're there listening to what's going on.
Well, who's there from planning? Oh, you mean Bedford?
Bedford, I'm talking about, yeah.
Okay.
So does the Bedford town engineer not involved in the planning process?
I don't know. I think,
it used to be that he reviewed, but it's still a third party would review it as well.
I
So
would
it's-
think he'd be
the
somewhat
town engineer
involved.
would be involved, but in Bedford, the town engineer is involved and would review the letter. So the comments the plans are reviewed in depth by the third party engineer who prepares the comments, submits it to the town engineer, who then, yes, this makes sense, no, this doesn't. Same in Londonderry. So the town engineer is, instead of reviewing the entire set of plans and all the drainage documents, is relying on the third party engineer to review, and then he's vetting that and saying, yep, this is what the town of Goffstown is putting out. So it's a balance. It keeps the engineer involved, but takes a lot of the nitty gritty off.
yeah.
Phil?
Yeah, I understand everything that's being said. The only concern that I have is when you have a third party reviewing stuff, or when you have them come with their plan and you tell them that, does the plan meet the requirements? Well, there are many things that can meet the requirements, but depending on the section and the terrain, the slope, the history. I mean, we have parts in this town where there's so much development went in, and we have so much runoff that it's an issue. And a third party may not be aware of that history on there. And yeah, when you look at this plan here, this plan looks fine, it meets all those regulations. But when it comes down to a local such as Scott may look at that and say, yeah, there's 3 ways you can do it. Doesn't meet yeah, but for this area, that's not what should be here. This is not the right one. It should be one of the other 2 that.
Well, that's where Colleen just stated,
Yeah.
the third party makes a report to the town engineer, who reviews the third-party engineering report and then makes comments based on his local knowledge.
Well, we still have the town engineer reviewing.
But I don't
As an
think,
oversight.
I don't
Yeah,
think you're
cursory
talking
sense.
Yeah,
about
well-
going to third party.
Oh,
You're just.
You know, we're not a town
Yeah.
of 6,500 residents anymore. How many are we now? 20,000? 21,000?
The last sentence was
18.5.
Yeah.
We are,
14th largest.
we're a town that's bigger than some cities.
We're the
So
fourth-
I don't think that,
we're the 4th biggest town.
I don't think that we are looking in the wrong direction. We're already talking about third-party inspection in this town, and we're not gonna let town staff go on private property and be criticized for not doing something correctly. That's what third-party engineers sign off on. So I am not opposed to third-party engineering review at the applicant's expense. They gotta pay him to do it, but I gotta pay third-party engineer to do it.
The only thing I would suggest, and I recommend that everything be known up front, so that if we're asking for a third-party review, that the applicant knows what the cost is gonna be. And if it's gonna be
Yeah.
$2,000, they know it's $2,000, and that they know that there's a set time for when they're gonna get their review comments. So I think if we're putting this into the regulations and trying to codify this, that, okay, 30 days from when you submit. So there's not a set application deadline, but if you submit on, March 1st, by March 30th or 31st, you're gonna have your review comments back. So you've paid for it, you've gotten your review. So that, because if there are questions on the amount and the time, then that's what's going to concern the applicants coming before us. So I think we need to balance and recognize that time and money are their concern, the regulations and the quality of the work is our concern. And so if we can make sure that we are setting a framework for when they're going to get the comments, they know how much it's going to cost the review. It seems to be a process that works. It's just in a town this size, you can't, Scott and Joanne can't review all this stuff. There's only so many hours in the day for you guys.
And I assume, I assume you have to have a contract with an engineering firm in advance as well, which means an RFP for engineering firms for third-party review. Barbara?
So that was one of my questions, which, are there people out there with the staff and time to do that?
Oh, yeah.
No. Well, time and money gets you everything, but does it get you personnel now?
Union Leader had the engineering section on Sunday.
Engineers week.
You would either have to put something like that out
I
for
know.
I didn't see
bid,
your mug.
or
Katie, yeah.
DPW already has a
I'm not young.
contract with 2 engineering firms.
We have 3 on-call.
Oh, 3 now?
consultants. One's pretty specific to bridge design, so.
Oh, okay.
We use that.
So 2 that would
Yeah.
probably be more
I mean,
involved with planning.
this could be a year from
But then
now.
my other,
Yeah.
and I don't want it to be a year from now, because we've been working on this for over a year. I want this all done now, or we're gonna be talking about this 2 years from now. So I know that you're unopposed, so you're okay at waiting another 3 years to get this done, but.
Wait a minute, where did that come
Well, you said forever, so we
from?
don't need it.
I really wasn't even gonna run again until.
I know, there wasn't anybody
Until
else
Kendall
running.
made
I
her.
know. So, but I think that if we're gonna do this, then we need to look at the conceptual review process. Because we need to give applicants, before they sink the money in the engineering, the opportunity to come by and say, this is what I'm thinking of doing, maybe in a more detailed way.
Yeah.
So
there's-
that when we see it up there, we can go, wait a minute, have you thought about A, B, and C? Because I wouldn't want them to sink all the money into engineering
Right.
and then come back and have us say, well, you didn't think about.
Right.
I mean, not that
Right.
anything's binding, but
That's pretty much what TRC is right now. They come in with an idea, we try to spell out all the pitfalls that they could come up against and what our expectations are and kind of what your expectations are here on this board. We try to let them understand what they're up against, and
What is TRC, a roundtable meeting, a virtual meeting, what is it?
it's a roundtable, we're sitting here. Yeah.
Well, I don't want it to go forever, but I don't think that we can do this we can put our proposal for the time elements into the development regulations.
look, the sites are more challenging. The land that's left to develop
That's
is
the oldest-
not good.
It's the oldest thing, all the good land is gone, it's all the lousy land that they're trying to develop now, and all the lousy land has a
and in
lot
Go-
more problems.
And in Goffstown, the problem is water. Between the wetlands and the granite, the problem on sites is water. So, Scott, in connection with this, if we take away all your review work, or not all of it, will you have anything to do?
I will, but.
Still a town engineer.
Yeah, I mean, it is, currently it's one of, I wouldn't say one of my larger roles, but it definitely consumes a good portion of my time, so
But you're not gonna be off the hook, because even with a third-party
Right.
engineer,
You'd
they're
still
gonna
be
do
getting
submissions
sucked
back
in.
to the
Yeah.
town,
Yeah.
and you have to review their corrections to the plan, and plug in the town side of it for a final discussion with
yeah.
staff.
And I think smaller stuff like, a lot line adjustment or a two-lot subdivision, maybe those aren't going for third party, maybe you're stuck with
Okay.
that stuff, but it's the things that are, the bigger, the more intense projects.
Yeah, like
that-
tonight's site plan, would we really want to?
Yeah, like you wouldn't send that out,
Yeah.
you'd review that one, in my mind, just as, I think you'd review that one internally.
Yeah.
But if it was, the bigger condominium plan, that gets sent out.
In your review of these development regulations, have you found areas that you're recommending changes to that are going to make your job more streamlined? Is there something in there that you're
More
recommending for the development?
streamlined?
So that, in
No,
other words, instead of...
We're adding things that we're making it more difficult.
I'm just asking.
Like, we're adding more stringent things, so
I
there's more
didn't know
stuff to
if
check.
in your review of the development regulations, you found problems where stuff was overlapping or was, you're doing the same thing twice under two different headers, and
No.
was anything gonna make your job easier or less cumbersome? It's
I
actually
think
getting
the
worse.
layout of it makes, the new layout of the regulations is definitely more streamlined. So I suppose in that instance it is. But now that I've been here for over 2 years, I kind of know the
Yeah,
regs where
you're
they are.
finding
So
out.
when I get the new ones,
Learn it all over again.
That happens. All right.
Uh,
So is the consensus of this board to make a recommendation to planning staff for the development regulations, anything that was discussed tonight, or continue the discussion at another meeting? I know it was a short discussion and it was, last minute, end of the night discussion. We could let it go for another month and revisit it, as long as we remember to come back to it before the final copy of the development regulations is presented for.
Does anybody think it's bad to have a better checklist and to start sending bigger projects out to third party for engineering review?
We did third party in Hooksett, and it was mainly Stantec. And I can say one thing, that most people wanted to run them out of town because they were obviously more expensive than a town would charge.
Right.
And some people felt that they kept finding things wrong on purpose just so that they could charge more money. And it
Their
became...
job is to find the things that are
Right.
wrong, though.
And it
If it's wrong, it's
became,
wrong.
Yes.
well, it became very adversarial between the
Well,
developers
that's a good point, though.
and
I
the
agree with
engineer.
that
Yeah.
logic. To not want to get into that.
But was that done before it came to the planning board or after?
So we would get the plans, and once they came in, we'd have a copy for Stantec, and they would do their review for the planning board meeting. And then we did have TRCs, in the very beginning of the process. And then once the planning board would receive the plans, there would be a letter from Stantec listing, everything that was wrong. And they were quite, I would say probably more than any other engineering firm, they were quite strict on, you know, if it wasn't there was no gray area with them. It was very black and white. And so what happened was after we got an engineer in-house, he would then review the letter and say some of the things he felt was a little too much, and we would say, yeah, let's knock that one off. So there would be things that would be eliminated, even though the third-party engineer was recommending them. 'Cause
Does anybody think that an applicant who's paying their engineer to present plans, that knew there was going to be a third-party review, wouldn't try to make those plans as good as possible the day they dropped them off, and make sure that they did not require a lot of reworking because this third-party engineer found that they didn't do a good job? I would think that that would be an incentive for them to provide complete plans that meet the
Comprehensive.
regulations.
They don't care that I comment all over it, but I guess it is.
Yeah, but
it does.
Your rate,
It is the rate,
the rate.
so.
I think that if it starts costing someone, you know, thousands and thousands of dollars to review and re-review because their engineer isn't doing their job correctly.
Yes.
But then, you know, that's the incentive to make sure your engineer is doing their job, make sure your engineer talks to this guy, sits down in a room and, okay, I got these comments, what does this mean, what are you guys looking for? And Scott and Joanne use their judgment to say, hey, you know what, that's too nitpicky, don't worry about that, but this is what you need to do.
Right.
I think it's reasonable, it makes sense, and in the long run, hopefully will save everybody time and money and result in a better project and less angst for this board with stuff coming in that's just not ready for, you know, prime time.
So Hoyle and Tanner's not returning those to you in the next week or two to rewrite?
We have them. So currently, I've gone through and re-edited things. Eric has gone through and added some comments. He and I sat down and have made it through about half of his comments.
Well, let's give it 30
So-
days for
Okay.
the
And I've
board
done the
to
same thing.
digest
But
our
it was
discussion
months
tonight.
ago, so I have
Yeah.
to read through
I'm
it.
just going to
March?
ship them off to you. so.
Joanne, I see our schedule. Could you make a note for the March 28th meeting to discuss what we've discussed tonight and act on it if there's any action to be taken? 30
Well, I
days.
guess my question is, we have a full board. Is anybody in a disagreement with the third-party review?
No,
So why wouldn't we charge the person that we have hired, the people reviewing?
well, we can't put it into our development regulations we're going to accept before we have a third-party engineer to review. If we're going to put it in our development regulations and vote to have them in place in 30 days or 60 days, we need to have a third-party engineer on staff at that
Honestly, I
time.
think that could
Well,
happen pretty quickly.
Yeah, but we can also put a different effective date.
Okay.
There's no way I want to go, this will get lost in the weeds.
Are we gonna see those draft I mean,
Yes,
we
we
need to
are.
adopt them, so
We
I
are
guess,
gonna see them.
what, are we gonna, because if we're talking about in 30 days, we discussing this further, in 30 days, we voting on the regulations?
Well, when do you
What's
expect to
the-
give us the draft copy of the regulations? In another month or two?
Scott has to finish up with Eric, and then they're going to send me the amendments that they're recommending, and then I will,
Have you done your?
I have, but it was
Amendments.
months ago, so
Okay.
I would need to kind of refresh
Is
my
anybody else
memory.
going to be asked to comment on the regulations besides Public Works and Planning?
No.
Okay.
So
I'll
Joanne,
sit
maybe,
down with Eric tomorrow
No,
because
I-
I'm on vacation next week, and then
but
when I'm back,
hearing
I-
the discussion
a
that
boatload
we've
of work.
had, if you can look at what's there as a draft already, has some of this already been incorporated, like as far as process or checklist? It sounds like
Check,
checklist
those
is there.
things have, but not third party.
Okay.
This
But
third-party
the
thing
people-
and the new process is
The
nowhere near.
people we're paying should have experience with having a third-party review on the plans and development regs, so we shouldn't have to generate that. I think
No,
we're
it
all
should
in
just,
favor of
it
it.
Should be
should
just a
be
line.
listed in
Yeah.
the regulations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have the present document in electronic form? Why don't you just send it to all the planning board members? We can read it in the next 30 days.
Because you're not going to keep track of the changes.
Yeah,
No,
there's
but
too many
just get a
changes, like
general- You
Scott.
have 30 days to get ahead of it and start reading it and getting, how many pages is
It's
it?
not really
gonna-
ready for that yet because Scott and Eric have
Okay.
changes
Staff
and I
hasn't
have
finished the
just
whole
written
document.
changes on mine.
The other piece of this is the stormwater regs have been pulled out of the development regs. They're more MS4 oriented,
Right.
and those are on Adam's desk, so I will.
Is that going to have to be an appendix to the?
It's
MS4
just
regulations?
referenced, it's just referenced throughout the document, the new regs.
So if someone wants to know about stormwater regulations in Goffstown, they have to go read the MS4 regulations? and-
Yeah, I think it's officially called the.
Or whatever it's called.
Yeah. So,
But we're not gonna print those in our document. You
no,
refer to them.
it's a separate document.
Right, if they
Yeah.
change.
Yeah,
Okay.
and they're a lot more strict now.
All right,
too,
we'll
so-
give it another 30 days. In 30 days, we'll talk about it
Yeah.
again.
And I'll bug Adam about that because those are on his desk.
Is the board now authorizing Joanne to have the consultant include third-party engineering review as part of the process? Is that what the board is authorizing tonight, to have Joanne add it, get information and add it in for the document to be looked at by the board? Hand vote. Dave?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. Colleen, yes. Barbara, yes. Brian, yes. Yes. Tim's yes. Phil? Okay, so.
And
it's a
we
uni-
need something in there to allow for a staff somehow, and I'm sure the people working on this, staff discretion as to
Yeah.
whether or not it needs to go to third-party review. Like, there needs to be a presumption that if there are more than 3 units involved or more than X
Yeah.
lots,
Yeah.
that it will be going to third-party review.
We reserve the right to send it to third-party review.
No, I think it needs to be going to them in the first instance, or else you're not gonna get people taking it seriously.
Well, what would the
It-
process be? That the board would decide if it was, or let staff decide?
I think
if it was-
discretion of staff.
Staff would decide if it could be reviewed internally.
And outside of the regulations, maybe you can come up with something like, okay, general rule of thumb, if you have more than so many linear feet of drainage improvements, or if you have more than so many units, or, generating however
I'd be
much
afraid to put
traffic.
standards in
Yeah.
there because they're gonna come in by
Yeah.
5 feet under the pipe
Yeah.
standards or something. They'll
Right.
find a way
Right.
to
Yeah.
avoid it.
Yeah.
It needs to be at the discretion of the town engineering staff.
Yeah.
Simple.
And then, so are we thinking about going to more of Bedford's model too, where
Well, we're not thinking about
everything's-
anything. We're talking about just putting it in now and we can discuss it more
Oh, okay.
when we get some more information.
Okay, so we don't know if we're gonna change to the, all comments pretty much cleared before it comes to you type deal like that?
Well, that's something we can discuss.
Okay,
And that we can add in, that's a line. We can put it
Okay.
into the development regulations.
Because Bedford's also a town council, so they
Right.
have a town manager, so I'd have to go back and look. I don't know if that impacts, it shouldn't, planning board is an independent,
mm-hmm.
Because,
but it might impact how they can review it, so.
Yeah.
It's because when they submit it, it's just for the staff review, so the 65-day clock
Yeah.
doesn't
Hasn't been
start
triggered.
until it
Yeah.
actually goes to planning
Right.
and gets accepted.
and I think they reference that, like, whatever that design review, because it's not
Yeah.
conceptual, it's whatever the
Design
design review
review.
statute that's referenced. So I think it's maybe kind of making 2 separate application processes.
Okay.
almost.
And so is my time still billable to the applicant? in this?
Always.
Okay,
Anytime you
Yeah.
spend is billable.
okay. I didn't know if this was taking away from
When,
that
and
because,
I've probably said this 300 times, but when the town engineer's position was discussed in the town of Goffstown, it was to be funded by the developers. Someone in government said that if we have a town engineer on staff, all the fees to the planning department for site plan engineer review will be paid for, and the position will be funded solely by planning board applications, which didn't happen. Okay, that's good. We've got a town engineer. So yes, your time is billable in all cases.
okay.
All right, how about the discussion of, are we gonna move forward with the renoticing? You wanna talk about that at a later date? Number of,
Yeah.
okay, we'll do that when we talk about the development regulation, because that's a small item.
Direction now.
Well, we have
I
to,
mean-
we have to have a statement that we can all agree on, so why don't we let that, we're not gonna get these back from Joanne by March 28th, so let's just bring it
Well,
back
do
up.
we think the continuance, the no more should be triggered by the number of continuances?
Yes.
Or by the time?
Well, hopefully, if we find that the applications are complete and ready to review, and actually are ready to review, we would have less continuances. It's when they come in unprepared that we get continuances. And as I was saying, and Colleen concurred, if we impose the burden for more work as a planning board, then we could waive the renoticing because we're the one generating the request to continue it. using continuance as an excuse because you're not ready and you don't come in is what I'm trying to eliminate.
Okay.
Okay, we'll move on.
I would just like to say, sorry, Tim,
Please, no, go right ahead.
let's be sure to, I know you guys are making checklists and looking at the forms, and I think the most important point is for an applicant to know what the process is,
Right. Yeah.
what it's gonna cost, what are the steps. Because surprises are so hard.
Right.
As
Yeah.
someone who's sits on the other table and does this, like, it's hard to be like, oh, now by the way, we need $3,000 because we're shipping it out to Stantec or something like that.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
to make that very clear
Yeah.
upfront and make sure it's consistent, because that's one of the reasons that started this process, was we have inconsistencies in our rules and our forms.
Yeah.
So let's just make sure that that gets done.
And I would suspect that the fee from the third party would be a lot higher, and then we're gonna hear complaints, like, why are you doing this?
Because we're tired of having our town engineering staff do your work for you. I'll say it right to any applicant in front of the table. I'm not afraid to tell them. They come in and they're prepared, great. And if they give a prepared plan to the third-party engineer, he's gonna thumb through it, look through it, and it'll be the minimum charge, whatever our minimum charge is to review. And that's what it is. And if it doesn't work, we can take it out. You know, if we find too much trouble with it, we can take it back out, or we can waive it, we can do lots of things.
I do agree with you. I think we have engineers out there who sneak things by us thinking that,
Everything you do on your wetland side is more impetus to do this, because they try to slide it by you all the time. You are main wetlands scientist.
Oh, yeah, we have to talk about that.
yeah, there's a
Thanks
little
for
more than
reminding
right,
me.
Tim, this year.
Yeah, I know we have that. So, did we adopt the planning board rules and procedures at a meeting yet?
No, I
Which
was gonna
include
bring-
No,
Ryan's
it
pledge of allegiance?
amended,
Been more than a calendar year.
there's more amendments to them
More amendments, and when are we
Yeah.
gonna see that back?
when I have a chance to
Okay, I'll leave it at that.
address
That's good.
it. I can't give you a date.
I will accept that as the proper answer. Okay, let's go back to the selectmen's
So
recommendation.
does that mean I don't
We
have
have a
to-
land acquisition document in
One.
front of us.
that I have at home, the red line version at home I can get rid of?
Yeah, it's kind of been
Joanne, I know
changed
you've
a
been
lot.
busy here, so how about let's go to the land acquisition, map
What's
27,
this
lot
on?
61.
Okay, so Mark is going to address this. The selectmen, as the memo states from Derek, the select board have entered into a purchase and sale agreement with the owners of map 27, lot 6-1 to purchase the vacant parcel of land. Currently, they're doing an environmental analysis of the site. So this would go to planning and conservation to see if they have any comments.
Okay, the floor is yours, Mark.
So basically, as we all know, the Goffstown Police Department is looking for land. We have secured land at the DPW fields out back. The issue that we have is ways of getting in and getting out. We're going to purchase this land with the purchase and sales agreement to have a second entrance.
If I may, Mark, does everybody know where the land is he's talking about? Everybody's aware where the lot is?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
I was gonna make mention of that. It's off Henry Bridge where the power lines are.
Yeah.
You look, goes up the hill and it comes up into the back lot of the
Ball fields.
ball field. It's making things simpler for the police department and probably even for the town residents. If all goes well, the road's gonna go all the way through and it'll segregate some of the traffic that needs to come the roundabout. They can come across and go a different way, but we're in the
What do you
beginning.
mean? What is it, how is it gonna impact traffic at the roundabout?
It's not gonna, it's gonna alleviate
It's
traffic.
gonna
at the
alleviate, it's
roundabout.
gonna alleviate the traffic.
Instead of all the traffic from the ball fields coming out next to the
We
public
have-
works garage,
during the
it'll come
day-
out on Henry Bridge down on the bottom.
Oh, good, let's encourage more traffic on
Yes.
Henry Bridge. What are you, crazy?
Well, it's going there anyway.
Well, lot
There's-
404.
Not necessarily.
town
I am
buildings
very
down
aware.
here
I
with
was
a
on
road.
board when all of that was purchased, but so,
How big is the lot?
St. Ange just had that lot forever. They used to
Yeah,
put their
it's-
septic tank trucks on it.
Yeah.
Remember you used to
Yeah.
see it in Henry Bridge?
How
And
big do we know? Like,
that lot is,
well, it
town
should be
has
on the
a purchase and
assessor's
sale
chart.
agreement.
I know, I was trying to read where it is.
and it abuts directly to the 404 Elm Street property.
So
The size of the lot, I'm not actually sure
It
of.
says 2.80 acres for lot 2761.
We're going to bulldoze into the hill. We want to make a slope of 8 degrees for the road, bank the sides off, and
If I may, Mark, did they do the engineering to make sure that is actually gonna do it? Did they shoot the?
Gigantic floodplain.
yes. Adam came in and said to us that the 8 degrees will work.
Okay.
So,
So what are we looking for, Joanne, at this time? We looking for comments from the planning board?
I have concerns based on the history use of that site, that the phase 1 environmental site assessment comes in clean, and I think that should be a huge condition
Oh,
on
it
this.
is, the Board of Selectmen, had a very large discussion that things, I know it personally, things were just shot in the back and they filled that land and it is what it is, but yeah, the environmental study is the biggest, most important key for this. If it fails, it fails.
So if it fails, the select board, in your knowledge, is not gonna wanna go through with the purchase?
As far as I know, we're not gonna go through with the purchase.
Okay, I just wanna know if they were gonna overlook it and buy it anyway.
And I'd also like there to be comment to the, a question to the town lawyer regarding potential liability for buying a parcel with potential fill of wetlands that has happened over time.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta be honest, when I heard about this, I actually sent an email to Derek saying, can you tell me what the basis for this is, knowing that land acquisition is not public on the Board of Selectmen. So I got the answer I expected, but I have to tell you, I saw this and I thought the town is out of its mind. You have access on Back Road, and let me tell you, when that went through, there was all sorts of stuff about the traffic and going in and out of that site. It's not like the police cars are going in and out of there all of the time. Most of the traffic on those fields is at game time. That gate is shut most of the time, frankly, now. And I can't believe that you are talking about putting ball field traffic on Henry Bridge Road. I mean, like, I'm a no just based on that, because Henry Bridge Road is a nightmare. And, you know, if you were gonna tell me that the police were gonna have an entrance there, you know, but I know that there are other talks going on about maybe other things on that property.
Correct.
But if you're talking about doing an access onto Henry Bridge Road, I mean, I just,
So from our perspective, we overlook traffic, demands on a road that you're bringing up. We could have an opinion about a gate midway, so that the driveway from Elm Street to Henry Bridge is not a through driveway. It could, the road coming in from Henry Bridge could end or have a gate where town is proposing some buildings.
Now, the proposed police station and proposed park fields, are they adjacent to each other? Is there a way to separate those driveways or not because of the way the parking is set up there?
I believe it's the way the parking is set up. When you come in from the back road, you go to right to the DPW facility, and you go left. You're gonna go down the hill, and you're gonna go by the ball fields, and then out in the back, you're gonna have the Parks and Rec new building supposedly, and then the police station.
The plan that I saw had separate parking for
Yep,
the
well,
park and
exactly.
police, and then
Yep.
the current parking for the ball fields. There are two separate parking
There's
lots.
two or three different lots,
Yep.
David. Yeah.
Is that even feasible, given that that land is intended for Parks and Rec? This isn't encumbered by any sort of land use grants or anything.
There's a reduction in the number of playing fields that you may have seen on a plan several years ago.
Haven't we had money from the taxpayers that was voted in on warrant articles to pay for the improvement of that site for Parks and Rec and not for a police station?
I believe so.
This is not a done deal. By no means. Okay, so are we going to do our normal planning, we don't comment or are we going to give comment to the Board of Selectmen on this land purchase? I'll ask board members for opinions.
I would say no comment. Usually when we get land acquisition requests, there are also lots of lands that are pretty clear nobody's gonna do anything with. I think especially hearing that there are plans afoot, I'm
Yeah.
even more determined to be no comment.
Well, if they want to find out what our comments are, they can read the minutes, because a lot of opinions have been expressed, and they can find out what our comments actually are, but I would say that if this board, I'd like a motion from someone regarding comment.
I think we should have, the only comment being the environmental site assessment, which I know is already addressed by the select board, but I wouldn't mind us echoing that as a comment that we feel that's imperative. So future use of the site, traffic, everything else aside, I think the environmental site assessment is, of prime importance.
Well, maybe we make a motion that we don't have enough information to make a comment on this. It's
Yeah. I
very
mean-
preliminary, and at
Yeah.
this stage, we don't have enough information to make a comment. I guess that's what, I would make a motion that we say, not just that we have no comment, but we have no comment because we don't have enough information to make an informed decision at this time.
I'll second that.
I will bring those comments to the select board next.
So I have a motion that we have insufficient information to make an informed decision at this time. And that was Kimberly and Colleen. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions?
Yes, abstention.
Mark's abstaining because he's up to his eyebrows in it. We understand your
And
position,
beyond.
sir.
When we're done the meeting, I'll give you my 2 cents.
Okay. Anybody else have anything else for this board?
Motion to
One
adjourn.
last item. Since Kimberly is not running for re-election, and this is probably going to be her last meeting, I would like to thank her for her service to the planning board and service as our vice chair.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
9 years.
Where's the cake? Where's the ice cream? Where's the cake and where's the ice cream?
I know when Jim retired, we gave him cake. He came back.
Have somebody give you all our cell phone numbers and speed dial us all at the next planning board meeting and say, ha ha, I'm not there, you are. Enjoy all that extra time.
All right, Phil, it's yours.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
The final word.
There we go.
So Phil, Kimberly. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, GT.